He posted, Wack posted, this has been reposted on Truth Teller TV. It says, "Well, my Houston backdoor just tapped in." Pause. Seems to me like old J Prince, respect, done scolded old Junior, J Prince Jr. And as for old Lil Bulldog, don't let him punk you like that. Stand a man, the old man, as you can call, stand a man. I said stand up as a man. It don't really make sense. It says, don't let him punk you like that. Stand like a man. The old man, as you call him, don't run nothing outside of the nickel. Sincerely, the exposers. And he said, word is the Alphabet Boys are coming. So he's saying that the FBI are actually going to be on the mob ties.
So he's saying that the FBI are actually going to be on the mob ties. The feds are coming for the Prince family. That's not a rumor. That's not blog talk. That's not some hater on the internet running his mouth. That is Wack 100. One of the most connected men in the music industry, going on record and saying his Houston backdoor tapped in and confirmed that the Alphabet Boys, the FBI, the ATF are zeroing in on mob ties on J Prince Jr. on the whole Prince Empire. And when you start stacking everything up, the shooting of Ben 10, the murder of Takeoff, the rumors of who got cleaned up after that bowling alley, the contracts finessed 2 times is exposing, the legal team mysteriously appearing for the man accused of killing Takeoff. When you stack all of that up, the picture that forms is not a pretty one. This family has been moving in Houston for decades, untouchable, protected by money, by lawyers, by reputation, and by silence. But the silence is cracking. The walls are closing in. And J Prince Sr. running to every camera he can find to explain himself is not helping. This is not the behavior of men who feel safe. This is the behavior of men who feel the heat. So, let's get into all of it. Every layer, every angle, every piece of this story. Because when the Rico comes, and it's looking more and more like it might, everything is going to come out at once. Before we get deep into what's happening right now, you have to understand who we're actually talking about, because a lot of people throw the Prince name around without really grasping the weight of what that name means in Houston and in hip-hop as a whole. J Prince Sr., James Prince, is one of the most powerful figures the rap game has ever produced. He founded Rap Hot Records back in 1986, a label that launched careers that shaped Southern rap entirely. The Gator Boys, Scarface UK's presence in the game, was touched by that label. He's been a manager, a street diplomat, a businessman, and by his own reputation, a man you do not cross. He has brokered peace between some of the most dangerous figures in rap, sat at tables most people never even get invited to, and operated for 3 decades with a level of untouchability that is genuinely rare. He is not a peripheral figure. He is a central pillar of how Houston built its power in the music industry. J Prince Jr. is his son, and he's been operating under the mob tie banner, trying to build his own lane, his own network, his own influence. And he has done that to some degree. He's been connected to major artists, major events, major money. But he has also been connected to a string of very serious, very dangerous situations that have followed him like a shadow everywhere he goes. And that's the problem. Because when you're operating at this level with this much money, this much influence, this much access, you can absorb a certain number of incidents. You can survive controversy. You can lawyer up, go quiet, and wait for the news cycle to move on. But there's a point where the volume of incidents, the frequency of them, the seriousness of them crosses a threshold, and it starts to look less like bad luck and more like a pattern. And federal prosecutors love patterns. Let's start with what just happened, because that's what's reigniting everything. All-Star Jr., a rapper out of Detroit, allegedly shot a man known as Ben 10. And the reason this immediately became national news in rap circles is because of who Ben 10 is connected to, NBA Young Boys Camp. And more importantly, because of what people are saying the motive was. The story going around is that All-Star Jr. and J Prince Jr. got into a conflict over baby mama drama. And this conflict supposedly escalated to the point where shots were fired and a man ended up in the hospital. Now J Prince Jr. came out and addressed this publicly. He said the internet was capping. He said he went to the restaurant by himself to meet someone for a birthday dinner. He said he didn't have any of his people with him, that everyone there was there organically. He denied having anything to do with what went down. He was very clear that he wasn't the one who orchestrated anything. But here's where it gets complicated. The narrative on the street is that Junior sent All-Star Jr. over there, that this was a mission, that it wasn't random, it wasn't organic, it was orchestrated. Now, Wack 100 went on No Jumper and addressed this. And he actually said he doesn't believe that interpretation either. He doesn't believe NBA Young Boys Camp would allow one of their people to be sent on a mission by someone from a camp they've had documented beef with. That doesn't make sense logistically. That doesn't make sense from a street politics standpoint. If you got beef with someone, you're not going to let your people be deployed by that same someone without asking serious questions. But Wack also said something that cuts deeper than the specific incident. He said that Junior has a reputation, not just rumors, a reputation of taking things from people who don't want to give them up, of not being the soft, slow-talking guy he presents himself as publicly. And Wack said he's personally seen a different side of him, scared, petrified even, but that the public persona and the private reality are two very different things. That kind of gap between performance and reality is exactly what federal investigations are built to expose. What's also notable about Wack's comments is that he's not someone who talks recklessly. He's been around. He's managed serious artists, navigated serious situations, and when he says his Houston backdoor tapped in and told him the Alphabet Boys are coming, that's not a throwaway line. He's placing himself as someone with access to that information. Now, is it confirmed? No. Is there official reporting that backs it up? Not yet. But Wack has been right before, and the circumstances around the Prince family right now absolutely create the conditions for federal interest. One of the things that's been circulating and getting a lot of attention beyond the immediate Ben 10 situation is Finesse 2 times coming forward and telling his story about how he was dealt with by J. Prince Jr., and this is important because it adds a layer to the pattern we're talking about. Finesse was running with mob ties at one point. He was part of that circle, part of that network. And he's now saying publicly that he was manipulated into a deal that he didn't fully understand. He's saying the contract was presented to him as a partnership deal. That was the language used. That was the framing. You're my partner, you're my guy. We're building this together. But when he actually got into the body of the contract, he says he was essentially an artist, not a partner. The power wasn't split. The control wasn't shared. He had signed something very different from what he thought he was agreeing to. He specifically called out the quarterback clause, the idea that J. Prince Jr. had the ability to quarterback his play, meaning control his movements, his deals, his direction as an artist. And Finesse is saying he never agreed to that. He never knew that was in there. He didn't find out until it was already done, until the ink was already dry, until he was already locked in. Now, contracts in the music industry are notoriously exploitative. This is not a new story. Artists have been signing bad deals since the beginning of the recorded music industry. Labels have been structuring agreements in ways that look good on the surface and reveal themselves to be something entirely different once an artist starts making real money and wants real control. That's a story as old as the industry itself. But the way Finesse is telling it, the personal relationship, the deliberate misrepresentation, the framing of it as partnership when it legally wasn't, that goes beyond standard industry. Exploitation, that's a specific allegation of intentional deception. And when you hear that from one person, maybe it's one bad deal. But J. Prince Jr. has been accumulating a list of people who feel like they were done dirty. And when enough people have the same story about the same person, it stops being coincidence. The interesting thing about Finesse is that he's building real momentum right now on his own platform. He's moving. He's growing. He's got people paying attention. And the fact that he's willing to come forward with this information from a position of actual momentum, not desperation, not bitterness, from obscurity, gives his allegations a different weight. He's not doing this because he has nothing to lose. He's doing this because he feels like the truth matters enough to say out loud. Now, we have to talk about the thing that is at the absolute center of why the Prince family is facing the level of scrutiny they're facing right now, and that is the murder of Takeoff. Kershnik Carry Ball Takeoff was one of the most respected technical rappers in the game. A member of Migos with Quavo and Offset, he was the quietest of the three publicly but universally regarded as the most skilled on the mic. He was shot and killed in the early morning hours of November 1st, 2022 at a bowling alley in downtown Houston. He was 28 years old. The party that night was hosted by J. Prince Jr. That is not in dispute. That is confirmed. What has been disputed, argued about, and dissected endlessly is everything that happened after the shots were fired. The shooting erupted, according to investigators, after a dice game where Quavo got into an argument with people playing the game. That argument escalated in Takeoff, who by most accounts had nothing to do with the original dispute, ended up shot in the head. 40 people were at that party. 40 people who saw what happened, and every single one of them left without giving a statement to police. Breaking news out of Texas, where a member of the rap group Migos was fatally shot. What we are hearing is that it was 28-year-old Takeoff who was shot at a private party. This all happening at a bowling alley. We do have some video of the scene. This happening around 2:30 this morning. That party again at a bowling alley. There are some reports that Takeoff and Quo were actually playing dice, and some type of altercation took place, and then the rapper was shot. We're hearing that he may have been shot in his head or near his head. He was actually pronounced dead on the scene. Again, he is a member of the rap group Migos. This is again 28-year-old rapper Takeoff, who was fatally shot early this morning in a bowling alley in Houston. Of course, we will continue to follow the story and bring you more information as we get it. 0 statements from 40 witnesses. That alone, forget everything else. Forget every rumor and allegation. That alone is an extraordinary fact. 40 people witness a murder, and not one of them talks to law enforcement. That kind of coordinated silence doesn't happen by accident. That is the product of either extreme fear or extreme loyalty. And in most cases, it's both. And federal investigators know that that's textbook Rico territory. The coordinated suppression of witness cooperation following a violent incident is one of the building blocks of a federal organized crime case. The viral video that came out afterwards showing what people described as Jay Prince Jr. walking past Takeoff's body, while Quavo was desperately trying to help him set off a wave of fury. People were disgusted. The optics were devastating. You're hosting a party. Someone gets murdered at your event. And the image circulating of you is that you walked past the body. That is the image that spread everywhere. Now, Jay Prince Sr. came out to address this. He said the clip was deceptive. He said that the few seconds captured didn't represent the full picture. He said that Jr. and his cousin Michael had actually been with Takeoff from the beginning to the end of the incident. He said Jr. had picked Takeoff up, that his fingers had gone into the wound, that he had gone to the bathroom to wash blood off his hands. He said Jr. stayed with Quo for 2 or 3 hours after the shooting, making sure he was okay before anyone parted ways. Jr. himself corroborated this. He said he stayed out there with Quavo, the two of them, for hours after it happened. He said they made sure each other was cool before they went their separate ways. But here's the thing about those explanations. They may be completely true. The video might genuinely be misleading. The 3-second clip might not represent what actually happened in those hours. But the explanations also required JPR Sr. to go on camera repeatedly to talk publicly about something he has spent 30 years handling in private. And every time he opened his mouth, he gave people more material to work with. Every time he said something, the comment sections filled up with people parsing his words, analyzing his tone, questioning his logic. He went from being someone the streets respected for his silence to being someone the internet was picking apart in real time. The comments that caused the most damage were when he seemed to point blame at Quavo, suggesting that if Quavo had never come to Houston, none of this would have happened, and going as far as to say he wished the bullet had hit Quavo instead of Takeoff. That statement was catastrophic for him publicly. People were outraged. You do not say something like that about a grieving family member who just watched his nephew get shot in front of him. You don't do it. It violated every code of street diplomacy that Jay Prince spent decades building his reputation on. And people said exactly that in the comments, that the more he talked, the more he proved he shouldn't be talking. If the walking past the body video was bad, the memorial was somehow worse because it was deliberate. The video that went viral, the flowers, the doves released at the site of the murder, that wasn't a candid moment caught on someone's phone. That was a planned tribute. And the flowers or signage reportedly read the Prince family name, not Takeoff's name, not a tribute to the man who died there. The Prince family claiming that space. People were not just upset. People were genuinely appalled, because what does it say when you put your name on a memorial at the site of a murder that happened at your event? What message does that send? At best, it's an extraordinary lapse in judgment. At worst, it looks like something else entirely, like claiming territory, like marking something, like making a statement that is almost aggressively tone deaf to the grief of the people who actually lost someone. The internet went nuclear on this. People said it was disgraceful. People said, you don't do that. You don't put your name above where someone was killed at your party. The family of Takeoff, the Migos universe, the fans who loved him, none of them needed to see the Prince family branding placed at that location. It was one of those moments where even people who were willing to give the benefit of the doubt on everything else ran out of benefit to give. The investigation into Takeoff's murder eventually landed on two names. Cameron Joshua, known as Lil Cam Fifth, who was arrested in connection with the incident for illegal firearm possession at the scene, and Patrick Xavier Clark, who was indicted by a grand jury for the actual murder. Clark has been out on $1 million bond, and his attorneys have been publicly saying they don't want their client tried in the court of public opinion and that they intend to fight for a fair trial. Now, here's what Steady Nash and others have been pointing out. Before Clark had a benefactor, he couldn't make bond. Then suddenly, he has a legal team, a serious legal team. The same lawyer, Kent Schaefer, who has represented Jay Prince Sr. in past legal matters, is now reportedly associated with this case. Now, the paperwork reportedly shows someone other than Jay. Prince paid for it, a rich uncle supposedly. But the coincidence of the same lawyer in the same city connected to the same event appearing on both sides of the Prince family's history with the legal system. That's the kind of thing that investigators notice. And Nash broke down exactly why this matters. If the Prince family had anything to do with funding the defense of the man accused of killing Takeoff, that is not a small thing. That is a serious thing that creates legal exposure that goes far beyond whatever the original incident was. That's obstruction. That's potential witness interference. That's the kind of thing that turns a criminal case into a federal case. And the broader theory that has been circulating that the real shooter was cleaned up, that someone was killed to prevent them from talking. Nash himself pushed back on this. He said it doesn't make logical sense. He said if you kill your own soldier, you lose all your soldiers. He said the heat that would come from one mysterious killing on top of another mysterious killing would force law enforcement's hand in a way that made everyone's situation dramatically worse. He said the police almost certainly know who did it. And he said that if the DNA evidence and how the bottle was collected get challenged in court, there's a real chance Clark beats this case on technicalities. But beating a case on a technicality doesn't make the federal interest go away. The feds build their cases differently. They're not necessarily trying to win one murder trial. They're building a picture. They're connecting dots across years and incidents and relationships. And when they have enough dots, they bring the Rico. And a Rico case doesn't require you to prove that one specific person pulled a trigger on one specific night. It requires you to prove that an enterprise existed, that violence and criminality were tools used to maintain that enterprise, and that the people at the top directed or benefited from that activity. And from the outside looking in, the Prince family has handed investigators a lot of material to work with. This isn't the first time the Prince name has been attached to serious legal allegations. Back in 2007, Jay Prince Sr. was charged with aggravated assault in what became known as the gym beating case. A studio owner named Ronnie Bookman alleged that Prince had ordered him beaten up because he refused to sign over part of his interest in a recording studio. The charges were eventually dismissed, and notably, the same Kent Schaefer handled that defense. After prosecutors reviewed Bookman's deposition in a related civil suit and found that Bookman had admitted to money laundering, mortgage fraud, tax evasion, and perjury, the case collapsed, not because it was definitively proven that nothing happened, but because the complaining witness destroyed his own credibility. That's the pattern. That's how this family has navigated serious legal trouble across decades. They have the resources to hire the best lawyers. They have the connections to create legal complexity that prosecutors find difficult to push through. They have a history of cases that generate significant heat and then somehow find a way to cool down before they reach a verdict. But federal cases are different from state cases. The resources available, the scope of investigation, the tools used, the feds operate at a level that makes it much harder to rely on the same playbook. And if WAC 100 is right that the Alphabet Boys are genuinely looking at mob ties right now, Jay Prince Sr.'s experience in state court doesn't necessarily translate to confidence in a federal investigation. What's happening to the Prince family right now is the convergence of multiple things at once. The Ben 10 shooting has put Jay Prince Jr. back in the center of a violent incident. The renewed attention on that incident is pulling the Takeoff murder back to the surface. The Takeoff murder is pulling back the questions about the alleged killer's legal defense. The legal defense questions are connecting back to the Prince family's broader legal history. And WAC 100 is sitting at the center of all of it, saying the federal government is paying attention. The timing matters, too, because Jay Prince Jr. has said he's going to sit down and do an interview soon to set the record straight. And that interview, depending on what he says, could help him or it could give prosecutors more material. His father's interviews have already generated enough commentary and analysis to fill hours of content. The family's instinct seems to be to speak, to explain, to push back publicly. But their public positioning has not been helping them in the court of public opinion. And public opinion is not irrelevant when a potential Rico case is being built. Witnesses talk. People who've been wrong talk. Enemies talk. And the Prince family has accumulated a significant number of all three categories. Drake is connected to Jay Prince. Youngboy Camp has been connected to Ben 10. Migos, specifically Quavo, is directly connected to the Takeoff murder. These are not peripheral relationships. These are central figures in the current landscape of rap, and a federal investigation into. The Prince family would send ripples through every one of those connections. The Prince family has survived a lot. They have survived legal cases, street beefs, industry enemies, and decades of scrutiny. Jay Prince Sr. built something real. Rap Hot Records is a legitimate institution in the history of American music. The Houston legacy they helped create is undeniable. But the streets and the feds are two different things. You can be the biggest, baddest force in Houston for 30 years and still find yourself facing something you can't lawyer your way out of if the federal government decides you're the target. And right now, according to WAC 100 sources, that's exactly what's happening. The Alphabet Boys are coming. Whether that materializes into charges, into a RICO, into something that actually puts people behind bars that we don't know yet. But the conditions are there. The history is there. The incidents are there. The enemies are there. The witnesses who walked away from that bowling alley are there. At some point, 40 people who saw something and said nothing become 40 people. The federal government decides to pressure one by one until someone talks. That's how these investigations work. That's how they've always worked. And when the first one breaks, the whole thing starts to unravel. Jay Prince Jr. said silence is starting to look like guilt and that you have to speak. The irony is that the more this family speaks right now, the worse their situation looks. And the more they stay silent, the more the feds can build around them. This story is not over. Not even close. We are going to keep tracking this. If the Alphabet Boys do move on the Prince family in any official capacity, this is going to be one of the biggest stories in hip-hop history. Not just because of who the Prince family is, but because of every artist, every deal, every relationship, every incident that is connected to that name. When it falls, it's going to fall loud. Stay locked in. The moment anything new drops on this, we're going to be the first to break it.